Yeah, we're live. Today I just got my first video up in a long time, so hopefully you guys will get to go check it out. It is on 4.8 liter modifications, which are good. Obviously, everybody loves the 4.8 liter. It's the little underdog, the little engine that could. And this is actually part one. What I'm going to do is I'm going to follow this up with part two. On the part one, we did a bunch of NA modifications. So a lot of times I wanted to put some good information in there, really that kind of carries over, not just to the 4.8 liter, but to really the whole LS family. As we know, they all respond to camshafts, and I got a cam test in there, obviously. But the interesting one for me, I think, is that I put in the header test. So we did stock exhaust manifolds and shorty headers and long tubes. And then I tested those like we tend to do, especially if we have all that stuff in the dyno already from a previous test. So what I did is we ran that same test of, in fact, we ran another set of headers that we didn't include in there, but we ran the stock exhaust manifolds, shorty headers, and then long tubes, both on a stock combination, so a completely or near stock motor, and then one that had been modified. So it had, I think that one had a ported head on it and cam, or an aftermarket head and camshaft in it. So it was, at a higher power output with the modifications. So then it responds differently to the headers. Basically, what happens is the gains that you get from each of those things just increase. Still, the shorty headers compared to stock exhaust manifolds don't really add very much power. The one thing I can say in favor of shorty headers is that they are much lighter than stock cast iron exhaust manifolds. So in the same way that even if we put a set of aluminum heads on in place of an iron head, like for an old small block Chevy or something, that's a worthwhile deal with, just because you're going to drop 40 or 50 pounds. You don't gain that much. It'd be interesting to weigh that and see what the change in weight is for stock exhaust manifold. So if anybody knows in the comments, let me know what the change in weight would be, just going from the stock exhaust manifolds on an LS application to a set of shorty headers. I can tell you just from picking them up, the shorty headers are a lot lighter. So they'd be worth it just for that. But just don't expect big gains in power, because you don't get that. You do get good gains in power from long tube headers. You got some in a stock application, not a ton, I think around 10 or so, but also you get 10 foot-pounds of torque, which you don't really get. On the shorty headers, we got 2 or 3. But when we modified the motor with the heads and cam, we got like 15 or 16 horsepower from the headers, and even more down low. And that's the interesting thing about this test. And that's kind of why I wanted to include it in this 4.8 liter, the video that I posted today. And that's because there's still this misconception that, oh, shorty headers or stock exhaust manifolds make more power down low, but they don't. If anything, that's where you get good gains from long tube headers, from the scavenging effect of the long primary tubes. So you get better gains down low. And we showed this, especially in modified form. Once this thing was modified, it picked up even more power down low with the long tube headers. And the shorty headers didn't really do that, and the stock exhaust manifolds didn't really do that. They just gained a little bit of power, through most of the curve. But the long for good gains down low, really all the way through the curve, but definitely down low, long tube headers definitely the way to go. And obviously a camshaft, I included the Truck Norris NSR cam, mostly because I thought, like with the headers and stock exhaust manifolds, that this was cool because this was a no springs required cam. I don't normally do that. Normally when I run these tests, we usually have already installed the spring upgrade on these LS motors, because we're going to be running a lot of camshafts. So the 5.3 liter that we did recently on the L33 was a good example of that. We've already run, I don't know, 6 or 8 or 10 different camshafts on it. And so it behooves us just to have a valve spring upgrade on whatever heads we have. And in this case, we had to do it to 2 of them. We had the 799 heads on that 5.3 liter, so we ran a bunch of cams with that. And then we also ran different cams with the no longer as cast TrickFlow 220 heads that were ported by the guys at Brian Tooley Racing. So they did a good job on that, but we ran a bunch of their cams on it. We ran the Hot Rod and Truck Norris on the 5.3. And then also later on, when we were running this thing at higher RPM on the 5.3, we ran it with the Stage 4 LS3 camshaft. And so we had to have valve springs for that. This was cool on the 4.8 when we did the no springs required cam, because we just used the old ratty 706 really high mileage beat up springs that were on those 706 heads, and it worked fine. In fact, not only did it work fine, it revved out to 6,500 without any problem. This is another concern, and I think kind of another internet myth that, hey, I can't rev my motor because it goes into valve float with stock springs on it. And it's better to have springs, and you almost have to have springs with a lot of these higher lift cams because you get into coil bind problems, and you need to solve that. But these motors will rev. I mean, we've run these things, you know, way beyond 6,000 that some guys for whatever reason are worried about. Now with a stock cam, you can rev it, but it's not making power out there. On a 4.8, it's 4.8 will still be continuing to make power at 6,000 much better than a 5.3 does, not because of bore and stroke or any of that, just because it's small. And it can continue to rev and ingest air because it's small and it has enough airflow and enough camshaft. So relatively speaking, it has more camshaft, it has more head flow, and there's more intake flow than the 5.3 does because it's smaller. It makes less power, and it does so with the same combinations at a slightly higher RPM. And for the guys that want to argue that's predicated upon rod ratio or bore to stroke or anything, it's just because it's smaller, because every smaller motor does this, regardless of what the bore and stroke is. It's smaller, so if you give it the same things, it's, you know, relatively speaking, those are more on the smaller motor. So the 4.8 was no different. On the camshaft, we put that Trek Norris cam, the NSR camshaft in it, and it ran good. Like I said, the camshaft itself made about 50 horsepower, which we have come to expect from big camshafts, and I say big, I just mean bigger than stock camshafts. Almost anything that you throw at an LS that's a step up from the stock cam, especially from the stock 4.8 cam, which is very, very mild, the mildest of all the ones that the factory offered. So pretty easy to get big gains, but hard to get like big torque gains, especially in the lower part of the curve. Even this Trek Norris NSR cam, you know, did fairly well above 3,000 and on out. But you're never going to get 50 extra foot-pounds of torque down at 3,000 or 3,500 RPM with any camshaft. It's just not going to do that. The exception possibly could be a VVT cam, and again, it would always depend on what you're comparing it, you know, what you're starting with and what you're comparing it to. But a cam swap is not going to do that. We see the big gains from camshafts out at the top of the RPM range, and people want that. They're like, okay, well, what kind of camshaft can I get that, but down low? You can't do that. The way that you get 50 horsepower's worth of torque down low, or whatever that would equate to, depending on the RPM, is that you add boost to it, or you add displacement, or you add nitrous. That's the way to get those big gains. Otherwise, they're just not going to happen down there. But the Trek Norris cam, the headers did well on that test. The Trek Norris cam did well. We did an intake swap, and this, just like with the camshaft and the headers, we did an intake swap on a combination that already had heads and cam on it. So we went from the truck manifold to the fast manifold and picked up like 25 horsepower. And that's a good gain. We wouldn't get that if we just did that same test. And I looked through all of my data. I didn't see that I had run a test of a fast manifold on a stock 4.8. I don't think I've ever run that. That's never an upgrade that I would recommend to people for a 4.8. Somebody that has a stock 4.8, I would never tell them you need to get a fast manifold for it. It would pick up a little bit of power, but it would be, you just wouldn't get the gains that you could, like on this test, if you had the other things that you need. You need, you know, if you have more head flow and if you have more camshaft in it, it will definitely make more power. And if you have those things already, and then you change the thing that it needs to be changed to get the gain, then you get bigger gains. But you don't always get that. I've posted the results from this test many times, and I get people like, oh yeah, I want to get one of those fast manifolds. I'm like, well, what is your combination? Well, it's just a, you know, stock 4.8 with a cold air and headers on it. I'm like, well, you shouldn't do that then, because you're not going to get that 25 horsepower. You're not even going to get it at the top of the RPM range. You're not going to get it really anywhere. You're going to get a very minor gain, and you're also, as you notice, you're going to get losses too. And so you're getting losses and you're not getting the big gain. So it's just not a good deal. Plus, it's, you know, a fast manifold is not a cheap date. You're talking about $1,000 or more for a fast manifold, and it's not where you should spend that amount of money. On a 4.8, you should put a cam in it or put boost in it or do something like that. You're going to get much bigger gains. So the intake wasn't, the intake did gain power, but only because we had the other things done to it already. And then the last test is the big heads, cam, and intake thing where we just did everything. So we got to have the stock motor and then replace the whole top end basically. And then that's worth a lot of power. That's worth like 140 or 150 horsepower. So you can get a ton of power by changing all of those things. And again, if you look at those things individually, all of those things will probably support more power. We've made more power with that 224 cam that we ended up using, or you could put a bigger camshaft in it. The head flow was enough to support 600 horsepower, so we know we got a lot of room left on the cylinder heads that we tried. We did a port set of total engine airflow 706 heads, and those, because they had bigger valves and stuff, and they flowed a lot, so they could support a lot of power. So we were nowhere near what the potential of that combination was, but we just didn't have enough motor underneath it. We didn't have enough displacement. We didn't have enough compression. We didn't have enough RPM, to take advantage of that stuff. But it goes to show you, though, that the 4.8 liter does really well. It's a good combination. It's a good motor. It makes good power. It responds well to all of the things that you would expect it to respond well to: headers and camshafts and intake manifolds, cylinder heads, obviously, too. Cylinder heads is another area where on the 4.8, I usually don't recommend that, because while we know ported heads can help, the 4.8 being a smaller motor isn't really in a position to take advantage of that in the way that the other motors are, the way that the 5.3 or certainly a 6 liter or 6.2 are, where they can use the additional head flow to good advantage. And a 4.8 already has enough to, since the stock heads will support, depending on what stock head you put on there, they'll support 480 to 500 horsepower or something like that. So, if you have enough there that's already stock, I would spend the money on the things that are going to make good power, and not the things that are going to make only just a little bit of extra power. But next time, part 2 coming up, that's going to be boost. That's where we make lots of power with, because that makes it pretty easy. Okay, should a cam be the first modification on any 4.8 liter? Right now it says Amy, but it should say any. Should cam be number 1? Camelot. Rich, Eric, Jeff, what's going on? Bill, 4.8 turbo is what the Ego Boost should have been. That would be good, huh? Everybody, I switched my name from Specialty Automotive to Rob's neighbor. The RAV8, nice. Turbo Sentra, starting to build the Fox body finally. Small block Chevy, Turbo 350, 268 cam, air gap, flat top, 624 heads. Cool. So you have a small block Chevy going in the Fox body? It's interesting. You don't see that as much anymore. Just finished watching the 4.8 video. Welcome. Thumbs up for you for watching the video. What all motors will connect to a 2008 Silverado 4060 through a rod, through motor, need replacement? All of the LS motors will bolt up to that. What was in it, Blackout? What was in the Silverado? If it was a 4060, was it a 5.3 then, or 4.8? Just weigh in on some aluminum 86 Corvettes. The springs and valves, guide plates, and rockers, 23.9 pounds each. Stock iron heads, 46 pounds. Okay. Oh, on the small block stuff. Okay. So that's 22 per side. Yeah. So that's 44 pounds. That's a lot. Original motor was a 5.3. Yeah. 300. The 4.8 will fit. A 6.0 will bolt up. 5.3. All of those. Getaway. What's going on? I have a 4.8 out of a 2006 Express van, thinking about a mild build, maybe put in a Cutlass, maybe a Truck Norris cam. Yeah, so this video is perfect for you, right? And then Boost will be next. Checking your email as Killer B. Yeah, David, that's right. It's the first one. There's only one E and B. Have you ever done some testing with the Yamaha out of the Taurus SHO? I've never run one on the engine dyno, but I was there hanging around the guys at the show shop when they did a bunch of testing. A good buddy of mine. I mean, I knew all the guys there, Vadim and Bernie and Greg and everybody. And they did a lot of testing with that on the chassis dyno because they had a DynoJet. JPL, what's going on? Did you get your 3800 running? Paul. Performance on a budget. Which 4.8 did you have, an LR4? I had an LR4. Your channel's like school. Reverse pattern cams. That's what you want to know about is reverse pattern cams? Let's discuss. That sounds very much like NGO. Not a fan of that. Every engine should have a cam for their first mod unless it's not an available option. The 4.8 L20 only has 8.81. Is that because it has the 799 or 243 head on it? You don't like the LS swap? Okay. You don't like that it weighs less and makes more power. You don't like you're not into any of that stuff. 88 LTD, 95-pound compression. What plans? 94 on roller. Build one owner car. An 88 LTD, is it a 5 liter instead of a 3 liter JM? I can weigh in when I get home. I think the stock manifolds are 24 pounds each. My entire long tubes are lighter. Yeah, I would think so. I would guess that I would just guess, but I'd say shorty headers are probably like half of that. Switching to 5.3 or 6 liter would be my first mod, then a cam on the bigger motor. So you step up from the 4.8 just to something bigger. It does make more power everywhere. 216, 224, 108 plus 3 on a 4.8, as we talked about, 3,000 stall converter against a 700 R4. So you are going to run that cam. That sounds like a good combination for a 4.8. 6 liter LS2 mods on the next live. I have videos up on 6 liter LS2 mods. I have the ultimate or maximum or some kind of weird name for it, but I have a bunch of LS2 stuff and it's the same as every other 6 liter. Yeah, boost is always the answer. How much does a 6 liter LS go for? It depends. Some guys I've seen find them in the wrecking yard. They're pretty cheap. They're whatever the wrecking yard prices are. Our wrecking yard used to be the same price for all the motors. Now that's not like that. Solve the mystery of why my LT1 wouldn't fire up. Standing water, locked out HEI when it dries. Can I still use it? There's standing water in the distributor or standing water in the cylinders, because that would be bad. Cam should be number 1 on the to-do list. It's too common for me. I wish it wasn't. You wish it wasn't common that they put the LSs in Mustangs? I think it would be awesome, but only to have an all aluminum one, and just so that you could say you have an all aluminum motor. I know for a lot of people that's not a big deal anymore, but I mean, back when I first bought my Mustang, it was a really big deal. Remember small block Chevy days when the first mods were headers or intake? Yeah, the 39.95 complete with the nuts, bolts, and gaskets from Super Shops. Everybody bought those headers, and then the 600 vacuum secondary Holly. Richard, are Phytech systems any good? I don't know. I've never tried one. I'm going to be trying some though coming up here. Ryan, you're here for another live chat. Very cool. I'm trying to get my small block Ford 331 F1A Pro Charger set up for the Fox body done. Motor's finally at the builder. I have an L98 out of an 86 vet left over from a C4 restoration. Okay. My 17-year-old daughter wants to learn how to rebuild an engine. Any recommendations or suggestions? There's a lot of stuff online available on how to build your first motor. There's also lots of books on that. And a small block Chevy is a pretty easy one to learn on. And the nice thing now is you have a phone, so you can take all of the photos of the motor while you're taking it apart. And what I like to do, especially when I'm doing a new motor, and it's not exactly the same as doing a motor for your first time, but when you're doing a new motor, is you bag up everything and mark it. I mean, if you take all the head bolts off, put them in one bag, head bolts, put those over there on the side. Front cover bolts, valley cover bolts, rear cover bolts, valve cover bolts, especially if you haven't taken, you know, that particular motor apart 100 times and somebody could just show you a bolt and go, oh yeah, I know where that goes. If you can't do that, but it's bagged up and it's marked, then you know where it goes. And also if they're all bagged up and marked, then you're not looking for them. And that's my biggest thing is I hate wasting time looking around for something that I shouldn't have lost in the first place. Too many projects. Yep. 302 EFI dual exhaust. The AOD was a test car for Transgo over 300,000 miles, never rebuilt since the 90s. Okay, so you're wanting to put a 351 in it? I mean, that's always good, but is it going to fit under the hood? Nick, I don't know what you mean by thoughts. L20 is low because of the head combo on them. Yeah, that's what I thought. Half a liter is always worth the effort. A 351 is going to be a much better combination than a 5 liter is. In Canada, you can get pretty cheap LSs, 300 to 500 for 5.3s and less than 1,000 Canadian for a 6 liter. It's standing water and cylinder. One of the cylinders is my 5.7 Hemi. Still baffled the machine shop. Got the bottom end rebuilt. Wanted to do the 3800 with a supercharger. A 3800 with a supercharger in a Mustang would be, I think, would be kind of cool. I remember when aluminum heads were a big deal. I remember when the Corvette heads came out, everybody was like, "Oh, look at that, aluminum heads." Because when aluminum heads first came out, like the Brownfield stuff, when those first came out for small blocks, there were some porosity problems with those. Was considered to be good NA power per liter per rules, limited to 11:1 compression. I would need more specifications on the rules to get a specific output, but guys are probably making 3 horsepower per cubic inch, but that's a dedicated race motor. Is there a big difference in ring gap requirements from NA to turbo at similar horsepower levels? 500 wheel horsepower, 6 liter LS. Yes. An NA motor, you're not going to have the heat. So on an NA motor, you don't usually do ring gap for power output. The way that the piston manufacturers and the ring manufacturers specify it based on different kind of usages, and boost is always more ring gap. About 253s for 500. That's good. That's good. That's a good deal. Double your pleasure. My 79 K10 350 has a flat cam. Is there a good upgrade and what's needed to replace? Yeah, there's lots of flat tappet cams available for a small block Chevy. I mean, there's an infinite number of them. I like the little Pure Energy cam from Comp Cams. It's a Pure Energy. It's a PE246, I think. It's a Pure Energy 246 cam, and it's a smog legal cam also for small block Chevys. The pre-LT1 small block Chevy aluminum heads were garbage. I disagree with that. They were, at their time, they were a big upgrade from an 882 head. Richard, oh, it got disappeared. I was just reading a Truck Norris cam. I have a weird question. If a turbo is too small for an engine, can you just put a smaller cam and it will be good? No, that's not going to solve the problem. The turbo should be sized based on whatever you want the power output to be. the boosted power output. And if the turbo won't support that, then the turbo is too small. If you want to lower your expectations on the output of the boosted combination, then you can run a smaller turbo. However you do that is up to you. Because if you take camshaft away from it and then try to add boost, the turbo is still going to be too small. For 9-to-1 350 mile driving and performance and weekend cruise and shows, which would be your choice? 218 at 50 or 222 at 50? You're doing single patterns on both of those? I honestly don't know how much of a difference you would see with those two. I would be curious to see. I think you would need a dyno to register the difference between those two cams. I don't know about drivability though. 218 on a 110 is probably not going to be too bad. Also wanted the 350 because it's basic and cheap. If I can get 300 wheel horsepower after I get heads, it would be perfect. Yeah, that's gonna 300 wheel horsepower would be 400 flywheel or so, and that takes reasonable heads. I've seen guys do that. I think with Vortec heads. Would be a good size turbo for 2,000 to 5,500 on the 5.3. Yeah, the RPM level doesn't tell me anything about what turbo you want. You need to tell me what power output you want. What would be a possible gain on a stock lower 6-liter with Trek Norris cam? Mentioned 3-quarter headers. What head and intake would offer the best bang for the buck? I don't know about bang for the buck. The ones that are on there would be the best bang for the buck. And if you're only putting a Trek Norris cam in there, you probably don't need to put ported heads on it. But the best, probably the cheapest head that you could get would be stock rectangular port, like LY6 or LS3-ish kind of heads, and that intake manifold. And those would make more power. But you're going to lose power down low compared to the cathedral port stuff. So I think I would just put the cam in the headers and use maybe mill the 317 heads, or if you can find a set of 799 or 243 heads, that would be better because you'd have more compression. They don't flow much better over 450 than go with a 450 cam. I don't agree with that. I don't think that I don't think you should dictate the cam lift by the head flow. Any stock converter and gears? I think 110. You do the headers and carb. I don't know what that is. Oh, Andy. I have 218 cam in the carb. Was offered a free unused L82 cam and lifters. I was looking for a little more idle vacuum. The 218 cam drives beautifully, but I thought the 114 LSA cam would be better. Well, those are different things. Is the 218 cam an aftermarket cam, and then the 222 cam is the L82 cam? Because there'll be a big difference in power between a stock L82 cam and an aftermarket 218 cam. The aftermarket 218 cam will make more power. Have you done anything with a 6.2 Ford? I have not. Keep reading the heads are like modern Cleveland heads. I don't think I would pick that as my choice. I wouldn't want modern Cleveland heads because Cleveland heads were probably bigger than they needed to be for the amount of flow, and what guys can do now with head flow is much, much better. So, but I've heard that the 6.2 heads work pretty well. Don't know if it'll make much difference, but I can only fit super short headers in the Mustang. It's only 6 inches long. A mid-length header makes more power than a shorty header does. So if 6 inches is a mid-length, well, 6 inches is probably still kind of a shorty, but it'll all work. .218 cam is a high energy. If the .218 cam is the high energy cam, that cam makes more power than the factory GM cam does. Richard, the peak numbers that the Truck Norse made on a 5.3, if I installed in a 6.2, would it shift peak out to a higher RPM? No, it would shift power at a lower, it would make power at a lower RPM on a bigger motor. And it's not going to make, it's going to make more power. It's going to make more power with the stock cam and more power with the Truck Norse cam. The 6.2 is going to make more power than the 5.3 in both cases. It's going to make more power stock, and it's going to make more power with the Truck Norse cam. But it's going to make peak power at a lower engine speed than it does in the 5.3. Have you had a Turbo 400 whine-like sounding like a power steering pump going out? I haven't. Is the pump going out in the transmission? I mean, they do have pumps in them. At what RPM on a stock bottom end 6.2 with BTR stage 3 turbo cam and billet wheel 88 on 93 octane would you ramp timing for max power, and what max timing 21 degrees? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. I don't ever do street tuning. All of our stuff is at wide open throttle. Around 5,500 wheel spools, quick and minimal back pressure. Yeah, Andy, I think especially if that cam's already in there, I would definitely choose that. Really interested in welding my own set of 8-to-1 headers, sequential headers. I was wondering if you have any idea how to calculate how long it needs to make each pipe. I prefer not to use any software. Well, I can't just give you a number. I don't know. I've never even tested 8-to-1 headers. I'm going to try some. We're going to run some from the guys from Stainless Headers before too long here. First and only LS I built for myself was an 82 Z28. I was going to make a small tire car. I used the stock 862 heads, K-Tech full porting, Trailblazer SS, Gen 4 bottom end, 8720 cam, BSR turbo. That's a good combination. It whines and idles if revved, sounds louder, gears all whine, first and second. Would it be better to get that low end torque out of a cam and an overbore? If you could just tell me what kind of power you want to make, and then I could kind of steer you in the right direction. Is there an aftermarket ECU that supports Gen 4 LSVVT? Yeah, Haltech does. Putting a set of Trick Flow 220s at 235, 246 cam and a fast intake, trying to get it to not make peak over 7,000. Friends want 600. Don't think it'll happen with a 102 or a cam. Is that on a, I hope you're telling me that that's on a 6-liter or a 6.2. Power with it isn't a problem. I already broke the stock 256 6-leaf springs. So JM, you think that a Lenati cam with the same specs is going to be worth 25 horsepower? I'd like to see that test. Have you ever heard of the Torquenator truck cam? I think, is that a Summit cam? It says it has higher lift. It starts at 600 RPM, made for towing, made for a 4.8. Is that the, who makes that cam? I may have tested that. MS3 does VVT also. I rebuilt it when I got it used. It's been doing it, bought a new torque converter, sending it back for the 4th time to the same guy to take it apart. Uh-oh. Pick apart 94 and up, 351, and computer and wiring. What else if it fits? How much taller is a 351 versus a 302? I've seen guys drop the K members down on those, but the 351 fitment is going to all depend on what intake you choose. Anybody jailbreaking stock computers? I don't know what that means. Does that mean that they're modifying them? There are ways to tune the factory computer. And Matt Happel over at Sloppy has tunes that you can just get, he just gives you. So you can put it in, you can put a tune in for a Turbo LS or something, and it's going to work. He's done a bunch of them. Block is a sleeved LS6. And it's a 5.7, and you're wanting to make 600 horsepower? Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty tall order. I searched for the lowest advertised duration cam, and that's what I found. Yeah, it's not, nothing's going to happen at 600 RPM. That's not, the cam isn't going to affect power at 600 RPM, other than having bad drivability. You can do that definitely, but you're not going to get gains at 600 RPM because the cam's not going to affect that. But I think I've tested that Torquenator cam. I thought it was a Summit one. Richard, have you tested an 18-to-1 header? I haven't yet. We've only run those at on the chassis dyno side. Ish and Eric have run sand rails with those because I think our guys are doing it because it sounds cool. I don't think that they're doing it because it makes power. In my opinion, it probably won't make more power. It'll probably make less, but it does sound cool. Richard, when you test an 8-to-1, can you try different types? I don't have different types. The specific type I'm interested in is the 8-to-1 equal length with a sequential firing order. The firing order can be done by, depending on how you route the tubes. My 72 El Camino SS is showing up this coming weekend. Nice. Looking forward to getting a drive. Oh, Matt, you got a Elco? Very cool. Can you test a TSP Mad Max cam? I've never tried one of those. In the big cam test, you did test the Torquenator. Okay. That's what I thought. And it did, I think it did fairly well. I don't think it did as well as the Truck Norris did or the Chupacabra, if I remember right, but I'll have to take a look. Mad Max cam needs a roots blower sticking out of the hood. Yeah, exactly, right? Just for the name alone, right? Frey, yeah, 550. I think, I mean, I have some 5.7 stuff that we did, but I think we did it with high rams though to get it up near 600. What's the best exhaust, X pipe or H pipe? There's no best one, especially for that. That's primarily going to be the way that it sounds. So if you like an X pipe sounds really good. That's why most people put it in there. They don't do it because it makes a lot of power. The guys from Motor Trend, from Engine Masters, did some testing on those exhaust setups, and it didn't change the power very much. But it did change the way that it sounded, though. It did sound cool. OL, so you're wanting more chop from your cam. The Pure Energy 246 is not a chop cam. So you want to put something bigger, then put an Extreme Energy 268 or something in there. And I have that video up where you can compare those two cams. The 246 cam makes a good bit more power down low, and then the 268 makes more power up top. And the 268 will have more of an idle quality if that's what you want. There's no better sounding motor than a Buick Wildcat. I don't know if I've ever heard one of those in person. A 14 Yukon with a 6.2, excuse me, wanting to do a DOD delete. What's a good cam to use? Wanting any power gain, but still keeping drivability. Also has a 23 heads. Then a Truck North probably pretty good for that, or something like that. The Chupacabra, whatever. All of those smaller stage 1-ish and lower truck cams, they'll be good. Should be good power gains, but also very drivable, especially in a 6.2. What can I do to upgrade a GT45 turbo for durability? You just get another one and have it ready to go in if it ever goes bad. I've never had one go bad, so I don't know what you could do. You just make sure that it has the proper amount of oiling and draining. And I don't know if your GT45 has provisions for water cooling. If it does, I would definitely hook those up. Hopefully I can get this head flat. I'm using a 1-inch by 14 by 30 steel plate with 200 grit. I have a machinist level. Well, at least the machinist level will tell you whether it's straight or not. The problem is the surface could be flat, but it could be flat at an angle toward the front or the back or the side. Actually, on Engine Masters, they proved that 2-into-1 made the most power. A single exhaust made more power than dual exhaust? Have you ever tested a Truck North on a 6.2? I haven't. Bunty, what's going on? How's our poll doing? Polio. Should a cam be the first modification on any 4.8? 78% are saying yes. I have to go get my doggies here in a minute or so. They're out in the back running around causing trouble because that's what they do, because they're puppies. That's their lot in life. Whereas Milo, he's just over here laying down. I'm Milo. And snoring. Close out our top chat. Excuse me, sing over to live chat. Credits are $50 each, and there's 2 of them required. Why wouldn't they just make credits 100 then if it requires 2 of them? Got an LS3 cam for my LMG to use as a turbo cam because it's about 230-ish Canadian. A stock LS3 cam costs that much? T46 is not going to chop, but would give the best mileage and grade across. It's a really good stock replacement cam. I said yes because I've yet to see a cam swap not make drastic changes. Almost any cam you put in there is going to be, big power. It only needs to run with a stock head so I can drive it to the paint shop. Yeah, if you put on a thick enough, squishy enough head gasket, even if it's warped, it will go on there and seal and run. I voted that gears should be the first modification on the 4.8. Gears and converter. What should primary focus to increase torque on an LY6? Looking to pull a 1,400-pound dump trailer. Probably boost. $10 credits for a Gen 5? Wow. That's tuner money, man. There's 4,000s in the center. I have it at 2,000s now. Have you ever looked at a manual to see what specs are? 2,000s might be close enough. Turbos on Summit look affordable. They do. We've used the Summit turbos. They work good. I don't know that I ever even, well, we did machine some of them flat though. I say a lot of the heads and stuff that we've run, I've never measured to see if they were flat. Surprising 2 into a Y with a single 3.5, I believe, made more than the dual X or H. I have to go back. I think I have that data. I'll go back and look and see. Centra's 4,000s in the book. Yeah, I was going to say that's enough to distort when you're bolting it down. People underestimate the impact of a stall converter. If I was a stall converter company, I would get somebody like myself to do that test, and I wanted to do. I talked to them at NPMC about it. I'm like, we need to do a cam versus a stall converter because we need to see what they do, and it's easy. It's an easy test to do with a draggy. I figure if you can afford a new truck, you can afford all the credits. Yeah, I can't afford either one of those. Dylan, yeah, you should have waited. I've got some cams that you could have bought for that. I ran a 3,500 9.5 inch behind a stock LS1 in a 2,700 car forever. It was great, cool. Do you have any cams for 5.3? Yes, I do. Just send me an email. The credits part of it is just a good business plan. They've obviously modeled that out to figure out that that's going to be the most effective way to make money. Nothing wrong with that. People are in business. People are in business. I'm going to close out our poll at 79% saying yes on the camshaft. Should be boost though, right? I mean, come on. Need a cam for an LQ9, just a little more than stock. I got some of those. I got some a little more than stock cams. Send me an email. I got some cams. There's my email address. Richard, if you could afford it, the Gen 3 Silverados are hard to beat. Yeah, mine's got to be mine is getting old. I still haven't fixed the ground issue in mine. Most days when I go out there after the truck sits overnight, I got to go out and wiggle the cables around just to get it to start. I do have a 3-bolt sprocket to put on a 3-bolt in my Gen 4, so it might take you up on the offer when I can afford it. Okay. Does anyone know the difference in height between a 302 and a 351? Depends on where you're measuring it. And we're deleting. 2 more minutes. 2 minutes more. 2-minute warning. I do need to fix that though. I fixed the ground side of the battery. I need to fix the power side now, and I need to go in and fix the grounds on the body and stuff. Richard, is ITB tuning hard for normal driving? Yes, it is. It's more problematic than tuning stuff where you have a single throttle opening, because the throttle openings all have to be synced. And sometimes that's a mechanical problem, not a tuning thing so much. If you can get all of the throttles synced so they open up the exact same amount at the exact same time so that they're all synced, then the tuning of it's not that bad. It's when they're not the same that it becomes a problem. Oh, JM, you're going to go to pick apart? All right. Trusty tape measure. 1 more minute. 1 minute more. Tuning is challenging. I agree. That's why I like doing what I do, because the wide open throttle part of it is very, very simple. Love to see the C5R's ITB setups. Didn't the C5R have that had an enclosed manifold? The C5R that I saw at SEMA had a manifold that came out of the head and went back into a common plenum that wrapped around on the top. What do you think of my street setup? Trailblazer SN manifold, yes. 92, yes. Big nasty cam. Should I port the 862s? They will help that. Is it a 6-liter or a 5.3? If it's a 6-liter, I would port them. A 5.3, it will help, but not as much. Board 30 over to 330. Okay. I think the throttle bodies are under the plenums, kind of like the V8. Yeah, I could see where I don't fully understand why they would use individual blades like that unless they're really, really critical about response rate for throttle. But I guess if you're looking for every, microsecond or a percentage of a second on a lap, it becomes important. Ron, okay, good. You got a 6-speed trans, nice. Nitrous cams should be called Squirt Reynolds. I do like Burt Reynolds. I liked all of this stuff. I didn't like the second Smokey and the Bandit as much. I like the first one. Yeah, White Lightning was good. Hooper was good. Was White Lightning, was that Gator McCluskey? And on that note, it is time to go. I will be back tonight And if you haven't, please go take a look at the 4.8 video that I just posted. Yes, that's right. I have a regular video up. And for those guys who are interested, I put my email in there. If you're looking for an LS cam, I have other stuff too, some Chevy stuff and some Ford stuff or whatever, just laying around that I need to get rid of. Let me know, send me an email, and I'll see you guys all tonight.